Hey, Jill. How's the sound? Hey, Kit. Sounds great. We got new internet. And this is a test run before we start scheduling shows. Sweden's in the house. Welcome, Slow Moon. I've been to Sweden. Great place. Welcome, everyone. Please like and share the live if you can. I am streaming on TikTok and YouTube today. Yes, Jill, I'm on TikTok also. Thank you so much for liking the live. Hi, Becca, David, Hutch. How's everyone today? Hi, everyone. How's it going today? And get these where I can. Are you asking me? Are you asking me if Trump did things to hurt Americans? Or Peter? Hello, Edward. How are you, sir? Does Trump play chess? I don't know. I doubt it. Hi, Kelly. Thank you for coming in. Chess is hard. Yeah, chess is hard. That's Hi, Rogelio. Carl Williams, how are you? Andy H from Rhode Island. Thanks for coming in. Please like and share the live. Have you heard any news or updates on the Anwar LNG pipeline in Alaska? So it's not actually not the Anwar LNG. It's not going to come out of Anwar. It's going to come out of Prudhoe Bay, which is west of Anwar. So, but now I haven't heard anything beyond. These are very slow moving projects, so we won't likely have day-to-day updates on things like that. But I'll certainly update you on those things as I find out information. Hi, Dave from Canada. How are you? Just the other day, the White House told us he plays four-dimensional chess, and we are all playing checkers. Okay, well, will Donald Trump get his wish from OPEC now that he's agreed to give up parts of Ukraine? Giving up parts of Ukraine does nothing for OPEC. He's going to have to offer them something else. Yeah, so he's going to have to offer OPEC something besides what he's offering Russia. So I'm waiting to see what that is. It's likely some kind of arms deal or something. We will find out. But he has to offer them something. That's just to get talks started with Russia. But OPEC doesn't care about Ukraine. They don't care about that. So he's going to have to offer Saudi Arabia something. So yeah, he's going to have to offer Saudi Arabia something. MBS does not care one bit about Ukraine. So expect to see an offer of some sort. You saw a video of me in the hospital. No, that wasn't fake. I was actually in the hospital. But I was bored. So I made a video and told people I was it was when all the drone hype was going on. So I made a video and told people that a drone did something to me. Cuz people are gullible. Mr. Global sent me a message. Hey, I've noticed you're always supporting me and keeping up with my content. I just want to say thank you so much for your dedication. That is totally a scammer. That is totally a scammer. Hey, they're so bad at scamming, they even send me messages. Okay. They're so bad, they even send me messages. So yeah, they're not good. Not good at all. Thank you, MBV. If OPEC increases production, thank you for the question, geopoliticus. If OPEC increases production, at what price point, at what point per barrel do we start losing U.S. oil jobs? We're already losing U.S. oil jobs. Chevron announced 9,000 job cuts today. 9,000 job cuts after $65 billion in returns to shareholders. 6 weeks ago, Chevron announced a record amount of dollars going back to shareholders, $27 billion in 2024, and they're firing 20% of their workforce during periods of unbelievable profits. We're already losing jobs in the oil and gas industry. It's already happening. Um, so, any downward pressure on prices of any sort is only going to exacerbate that. Thank you so much for the corn. I do have a thank you so much for the gifts. Yeah, that's already happening. That's already happening. So would Trump threatening to remove Saudi's oil protection make Saudi come to the table to make a deal with him? I don't think so. There is a reason that MBS has saddled up and became really tight with Vladimir Putin, and it is to give him leverage over the United States. And the leverage he needs over the United States is he needs a backup to protect his oil fields. In addition to that, um, if the United States withdrew any protections they currently have in place, that would not be good for the United States. That's probably the single most targeted spot in the world is the Saudi Arabian oil fields. So, with that's sort of an empty threat to say we won't protect it anymore. And Saudi will just say, okay, we'll just watch oil prices go through the roof then. Um, I don't think that I don't Donald Trump doesn't have any leverage over either one of those guys. So I that's why I'm waiting to see what kind of offer he makes. He'll probably make them some very lucrative offer on weapons or trade or just something, but he's got to offer them something. He has to. And for the life of me, I at this moment don't know what that could be. So the likes are climbing on TikTok. Over 7,000 likes already. Thank you so much. Will the Chevron cuts affect the Chevron Richmond refinery? The cuts are across the board. Um, the Thank you so much. The cuts are across the board. And what they're going to do in the coming days, they're going to start offering people buyouts. I went through this one time at Shell. They start offering people buyouts. They give you a portion of your benefits. They give you 6 to 8 months of pay, and they ship your ass out the door. And that's how they're going to start. Some people will accept them, some people won't. Once they go through that phase of the cuts, and once they determine who will leave voluntarily, then they will just fire the rest. They will decide, who they need to fire after that, and they'll just fire the rest. And the people they fire after the buyout offers won't get the buyout. That's how that works, and that's how they press people to take the buyout, is to tell them, "You won't get a buyout if you don't take it now. If you don't take it and you end up on the chopping block, good luck." That's how that works. That is how that works. Hello, Juju. Thank you for coming back to my live today. Live's doing pretty good. Live's doing pretty good on YouTube, doing pretty good on TikTok. Thank you, everyone, so much for the support. Let's see here. Elon cutting federal spending except for the U.S. buying Tesla's armored vehicles. When you get to determine what is essential and what is not, that's what's going to happen. I've brought Jill up into the live on TikTok. Please gift the mod. She's here helping me do stupid stuff. And so please gift the mod. What gas company treats their employees fairly? I would like to support their workers fairly. The small ones typically. So the smaller the company, the better they treat their people, right? That's basically how it works. The bigger the company, the better the job, the better the pay, the better the benefits. Also, the quicker to get your ass fired for. Yeah, like that's just But that's basically how it works. I will say this: 9,000 jobs Chevron's going to cut. It's not that it's not typical for this to happen. It's just not typical for this to happen when you just returned $27 billion to shareholders. That's what's insane about it. I've never seen that before. That's a different kind of thing right there. So, and keep in mind, over the last 3 years, $65 billion returned to investors. The 9,000 employees is to return to them one more $1 billion. They're firing 9,000 people to return one more $1 billion to investors because the 65 wasn't enough. And I hate to be the one to tell you this, but the 66 ain't going to be enough either. Yeah, that's not a thing. It's not. It's never enough. That's the whole point. It's never enough for these people. How does private equity affect the oil industry? Private equity finances a big piece of the oil and gas industry in the United States, and they make a lot of money doing it. And so they have a large effect on activity, drilling activity in the United States, because typically, you know, private equity is an investor in a lot of things. And, just because you may see a Chevron or an Exxon or a ConocoPhillips on a sign on a location, that doesn't mean that other people aren't investing in that. Even big oil companies hedge their bets and use other people's money to make more money. So they're across the board. So by cutting that many people, Chevron is obviously not going to drill, baby, drill. Well, in addition to the 9,000, they had already announced at the end of last year that they're cutting capex by over, I think it was $1.5 billion, that they were going to reduce their capex, and that was through their upstream side, which means they'd already come out and said they were actually going to drill less this year than they did last year. They had announced that before the job cuts. I would personally like to see the energy sector nationalized, but that's not going to happen. Um, that would be a very expensive thing to do. That would be a very expensive thing to do. Trying to keep up with both of these lives. This is how we do it. New Jersey just announced increases for electric. Yeah, they want to build more wind power, and you're going to pay for that. So that's how that works. I have used your information for quite a bit in my Discord debate server to educate a bunch of ill-informed Trump supporters. Thank you, Hannah. Are other companies cutting capex? Not as significantly as Chevron was, but Exxon typically does their capex like 3 years out, and they say we're going to spend this much money over the next 3 years, and that gives them a little mobility, like they can spend more one year and less the next. So a lot of times, and they may even come out and announce what they plan on spending, but that doesn't mean that they're going to spend that because they give themselves, like I said, some mobility in their spending, and they typically do it in like 3 or 5 year chunks. Do you think there will be a short term drop in gas prices? I don't really think so. I mean, if gas prices drop, we're talking pennies and very short lived and likely not enough for anyone to even notice it. Of course, if gas drops a penny, I got to hear about it from 150 fucking Trump supporters. They'll message me, "Hey, gas dropped a penny today, motherfucker." I'm like, "Really? Really?" Gas is 3.16 a gallon today on national average. It is up. Natural gas is up. I think oil was down a little when I looked, but I'm not sure. Hannah, thank you so much for the $10 super. Thank you so much. That is so appreciated. Lori, welcome. I like doing live chats. I like doing this stuff. I like kind of the speed at which everything moves and getting asked a lot of questions and kind of switches my brain on. Oilfield service companies will have layoffs too. Yes, they will. Oilfield service companies are definitely going to have layoffs in the coming year. Um, so listen, if you work in the oil and gas industry, it's not going to be, it's not all doom and gloom, and there's not going to be some huge crash where just there's not going to be industry wide layoffs. But understand that your risk for something bad happening is increasing daily. And so just be prepared. I've told people for the last 6 months to be prepared. And most of them just argue with me. But I don't want anyone to lose a job, and I'll fight for them to keep their job. But I'm definitely going to warn people what's coming. I paid $2.69 using my Kroger points, averaging $3 in Metro Detroit. How long will layoffs affect natural gas pricing? I don't think layoffs are going to affect the natural gas pricing, and I don't expect to see many layoffs at all. We'll probably see a little bit of job growth in the pure plays, the natural gas pure plays. Your Anteros, companies like that, Encinos, uh, Southwest, companies that operate in the Northeast corridor that are pure natural gas players or heavily weighted in natural gas. I would expect to see some job growth, but in companies that are heavily weighted in oil production, that's not going to be good for them. So they're making cuts. I have 9,000 people in my Discord, very active political channel with a lot of them writing every day how the libs are getting owned. It's tiresome. Are countries obligated to disclose their oil production capabilities or capacities? What if Saudi Arabia could produce 1,100 times the amount of oil it does today? Would they be able to hide that fact? No, you wouldn't be able to hide it because, one, they are obligated to disclose that. And two, if they don't, it'll be shown in the market because that oil has to be sold and it has to be sold through contracts. And every contract is public information, right? So if Saudi Arabia to rapidly increase production, we would see it on the trading side of the industry if they didn't announce it like they did in April of 2020. They increased production overnight, literally by 2 million barrels a day. They have that spare capacity where they can do that. They didn't warn anybody. Nobody saw it coming. We just saw a massive increase in contracts. So we knew that what Saudi Arabia was up to, and oil went negative like really quick. So Virginia Fowler, gas here in Oklahoma is 269. I am in Oklahoma as well. It's 282, I think, down the street. It's gone up about 30 cents in the last couple of months. That's a good question. Is oilfield construction going to drop with high steel tariffs and Trump selling Ukraine for cheaper gas? I don't know that the construction side, as long as we maintain a rig count, then the construction side will probably be okay. The construction side of the business follows drilling very closely, and so we'll have to see. I don't suspect that the construction side will see a big dip. Could see a little softening, but I don't expect the construction side of the business to crash. Um, it might slow down just a little bit, but it won't be end of the world type stuff. Sorry, buddy. I'm getting tired of Americans telling Canadians what they will do. Well, I don't blame you. I don't. I think it's stupid as well. Um, how long do you think prices will be depressed if a deal is struck? That's Mark Miller. It depends. So just real quick, let's look at what happened last time, right? So Donald Trump got OPEC to increase production, right? And they thought that Donald Trump was up to something because they slowly increased production. They increased the production over a period of 6 months. And they could have done that very quickly. The reason they did it over a period of 6 months was to allow all of the countries that was currently buying oil from Iran to start sourcing their oil from other places. That's why they did it over a period of 6 months. So we put sanctions on Iran. They had 6 months, South Korea, China, India, Japan, other countries. They had 6 months to find oil elsewhere. And then when that 6 months was over, OPEC hit their peak production. And here's the crazy thing. Our allies in that deal that had been buying oil from Iran before that deal, they had already sourced oil from everywhere else. So no one was dependent on Iranian oil anymore. Those countries like South Korea, they literally cut Iran off immediately in the first month. So there was no one dependent on Iranian oil anymore when Trump put the sanctions waivers on the Iranian oil, so the people that were dependent on it would have more time. But the people that were dependent on it weren't buying it anymore. They hadn't been buying it for months. He literally just crashed the market because, you know, he wanted gas prices to come down and he wanted OPEC to increase production and he wanted Iran to be sanctioned. And it didn't work out for him. So he just did it himself by granting the waivers. And that that was an 8 or 9 month deal. And so if that plays out exactly, because the moment that Donald Trump gave Iran the waivers on the sanctions, the very moment that happened, OPEC immediately cut production to try to soften the blow of the crash as much as they could. If OPEC hadn't immediately cut production when they did, that would have been a very, very bad crash. That would have been as bad as the 2014, 15, and 16 crash. It would have been as bad. Completely, completely done by the president of the United States. And when you think about it in those terms, and I hate to say it, but when you think about it in those terms, in some ways, OPEC sort of saved a lot of American oil and gas companies by immediately cutting production. But keep in mind, for that crash, OPEC, specifically Saudi Arabia, they lost about $60 billion in that crash. And that's why I'm saying they're not doing that shit again. They're not going to go lose $60 billion again. And so we're waiting to see what Donald Trump is going to offer them, because they're not going to be conciliatory. They're not going to just, um, yeah, this is not going to be easy for Donald Trump, and that's why I'm so interested to see what's going to happen. Let's give them Marjorie Taylor Greene is what I got a comment in the Do you see a time when the US is not invited to the party anymore? We're already in that time. Okay? We're already in that time where the United States isn't invited to the party. And the thing is, though, they'll let Donald Trump come to the party. they will absolutely let Donald Trump come to the party because look at the OPEC 2020 deal. I'm telling you, they have his number, and they're gonna work him over again. And I don't know how it's all gonna work out. I just know it's not gonna be good. It's just not. When he says he'll meet Putin in Saudi Arabia, what do you think he's negotiating? He's trying to negotiate Ukraine, an OPEC oil production increase, and sanctions on Iran all at the same time. That's what he's trying to do. That's why they're looking at OPEC nations for a meeting. Vladimir Putin offered for Donald Trump to meet him in Moscow. And then what we heard is maybe the Middle East. So I don't know if he doesn't want to go to Moscow or if he would rather go to the Middle East because he's working on a broader deal, and that's what I suspect. Lorianne Wormley, thank you so much for the super chat. If you have a question, please feel free to ask anything. You say you're not a Democrat, but you could have fooled me. Well, it doesn't take much to fool you, I suspect. But no, I wasn't trying to fool anyone. I'm a Democrat. You don't have to be a Democrat to know that Donald Trump is a dipshit. That's not a thing. That's not a thing. There's Republicans all over this country that recognize Donald Trump as a dipshit. And you don't say that. I doubt you say that kind of stuff when I'm talking about Joe Biden. I doubt you say that kind of stuff when I'm talking about Joe Biden. Neil Sharrow, thank you so much for the bronze membership on YouTube. You're the man, Neil. Thank you so much. That's true, Hannah. Most voters are in the independent realm. Um, yeah, independents hold the majority of voters across this country, and um, and it's because they don't really align with the other side. Were you going to say something? Okay, so we have May on record. She does not like Donald Trump. Did you hear the viral video of Elon's kid telling Trump that he needs to leave? Adorable yet funny. I heard it, but I honestly didn't know if it was some kind of fake, so I didn't pay much attention to it because there's just so much fake stuff out there right now. I'm not I'm not saying it did or didn't happen is what I'm like. I don't know if that was real or not. I saw it once and I was like, "Oh, okay." But I don't know if it's real. You know what I mean? Um yeah, I don't know if it's real. If I knew I'd say so, but I don't. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Victoria on TikTok says it's real. She's pretty reliable. I can barely see these comments on TikTok because I don't have my glasses on. Hannah says, I don't think it was. The telling him to shush maybe though. Yeah, who knows? Domestic steel producers are announcing price increases. Yeah, domestic steel producers. What do we use steel for? Ev- Everything, right? Sarcastic sister. I could not find your books on Amazon. Um, do you, do you know my name? Is my name displayed on YouTube, Jill? I can't remember. Um, if you just search my name, Matt Randolph on Amazon, it should take you to my page, my author page. That's a lie. Don't let Jilly lie to you like that. That she didn't find me. I found her. Actually, that's not true. Someone told her about me. Yeah. I mean, David Darcy. Thank you so much for the super chat. $10 super chat from David Darcy. Thank you for your expertise and integrity. Thank you for the support, David. I really appreciate it. Is everything working good, Jill? All the video and audio, did I fix it? So, I was having all those internet problems yesterday, and I came back to this office so my problem was I wasn't getting enough signal back here in my office because my router is clear in the other corner of the house. I came back here to this office and I did a speed test, and it was actually faster than it was in the same room the router's in. And I'm like, I don't believe that shit because the internet's not as good back here. Um, so I did a speed test on the app that my internet service provider gives me, right? And it says it's great. You got the best internet, right? You got the best internet. And I'm like, fuck that. So I downloaded another app to do a speed test. And then I did another speed test off of some website. Both of those speed tests were about a 1/3 of the speed as what my own internet service provider was telling me it was. Yeah, I think they're full of shit. Um, I went down to their office and I got another mesh extender. I have a mesh. I honestly I didn't even know I had a mesh to begin with because I just had a single router, but I didn't have any of the extenders. So I got one extender and it fixed everything. We had steel coils coming down when we made the oil and gas pipe. Yeah, tariffs on steel increase costs on new drilling significantly. Significantly. Huh? My ghoul? Reset your goal. Okay. Okay. Goal is reset. All the corn. I want all the corn. Sometimes I notice your audio at times doesn't your video and videos. Yeah, so that is I have actually figured out what that is. It took me a while, but it is the app that I'm using to clean up. So what I do is I create content on TikTok and then I use this app and I download that video and it cleans it up, cleans all the watermarks off of it. It's that app that I'm using. So I think I'm going to try a different one. But it happens too much. What about where are we at here? Russia's attempt to or EU's attempt. EU will confiscate Russian tankers. The conflict over there is heating up a little bit between the EU and Russia. Russia had a spy ship in their waters yesterday. Um, so that's heating up a little bit. And if that pops off, who knows what can happen with oil and gas prices if that pops off. I'm not going to make any predictions because I don't expect it will pop off. And I would like to see the extent of it before I would do that anyway. But gas prices have increased since Trump took office. Eggs are $12.59 for 18 eggs. So much for him making things cheaper. If there's anything we've seen is that because a lot of the arguments for gas prices rising under Joe Biden was simply that he got elected. Just his mere presence made people nervous. Just his mere presence drove up gas prices. It didn't matter if his actual policy impacted gas prices. Just his presence brought negative sentiment into the oil and gas market. And I wonder why that's not being reflected in Donald Trump's presence, bringing supposedly positive vibes to the oil and gas industry. Like that sentiment is not apparently reciprocal, right? Like we're not seeing it on both sides. So I think that tells you just how much sentiment matters, right? Do you think there is a way to lower oil prices and gas prices? Um, there's a lot of ways to do it, but there's no good ways to do it. Well, there's a good way to lower gas prices, and that's to reduce the amount of exports of gasoline that we're exporting out of the country. That's the best way to do it. That bring up inventories because gasoline is traded on a more regional, local level. Oil's traded globally. So reducing oil exports wouldn't really impact oil prices much globally, but reducing gasoline exports would, and it would put downward pressure on gas prices. And the truth is, we really don't care what oil prices are. Everyone's worried about their gas prices, right? So if we found a way to bring down gas prices, you wouldn't really care what oil prices were, and that's one way to do it. Um, Agent Pong, $5 super chat. Sending woke money in honor of Tish to Mr. Global and Jill. Good morning and good afternoon. We are awake, every human, even you, Tish. Okay. Thank you so much, Agent Pong. What's woke money? Jill, what is that? What's woke money? I've never heard that before. Hey, I'll take it. I don't care if it's woke. Huh? Thank you very much, Agent Pong. Andy says Donald Trump scared the chickens into not producing eggs. Uh, Look, you can't trust a chicken. I'm telling you, you can't. You cannot trust a chicken. Oh, thank you, sarcastic sister. Woke money doesn't have pronouns. What did I say may pop off? Tensions are rising. I don't think it's going to pop off, but tensions are definitely rising between the EU and Russia. Um, The EU's talking about seizing Russian oil tankers, and Russia's had a spy ship in their waters yesterday. And so, there's a little bit of stuff building up there. We'll just have to see what happens. Don't worry about it, woke Antifa. Got him. Russia is also cutting cables. Tennessee farms are renting out chickens. Tennessee farms are renting out chickens. You can rent a chicken? Really? Are They're pimping out chickens in Tennessee, folks. They're pimping out chickens in Tennessee. Hey, it's 2025. Mark Miller, thank you so much. $2 super chat. I really appreciate it, Mark. What if we never lifted the oil export ban? So I've actually had a few debates over this if we never lifted the oil export ban, because, and my argument always was, if we never lifted the ban, we never would have reached the production levels that we reached. The reason we produce as much oil as we do is so we can sell it overseas at a premium. That's why we're at 13.5 million barrels a day. It's not because we're not oil companies aren't producing 13.5 million barrels of oil a day to lower our gas prices. They're doing that to sell it at a premium overseas. And by lifting the export ban, it decreased the differential. The differential, what is sometimes called a discount when we're talking about Canadian oil, it's also called a differential. It decreased the differential between WTI and Brent. It made the price of WTI crawl up and get closer to Brent, but it's still below it, right? So I don't know that we would be producing the amount of oil we would be producing if we had never lifted the export ban. That's what I think would have happened. I think it would have slowed down production in the United States. And keep in mind, and for the people that argue with me about this, 100%, okay? 100%, not 90%, not 95%, 100% of the increases in oil production in the United States since we lifted the export ban is being exported. 100% of the increases in oil production in the United States since 2016, 9 years, 100% of those increases in oil production is all being exported. We have not kept a drop of that oil. And that's why I make the argument that we just wouldn't have increased production that much. That's what would have happened. And I don't think it would have helped or hurt gas prices. If we would have gone either direction in that, it wouldn't have helped or hurt gas prices. Saudi Arabia and OPEC would have a lot more power than they do. Russia would have a lot more power. So there's very strong geopolitical reasons that support why we need to produce as much as we produce and export it, because it gives us leverage around the world. It establishes and maintains relationships with our allies, the people who we trade with, that we sell this oil to. But as far as benefiting Americans at the gas pump, that's not a thing. It does benefit us in other ways, but it doesn't benefit us at the gas pump. Okay, that's not a thing. Didn't we stop colonizing like 70 years ago? Thought we did. I thought we did, but apparently we're back in the colonizing game. Tish, you're fine. You're fine, Tish. Don't worry about it. He needs to leave every country alone because he doesn't understand the concept that countries become to each other, not to him and his minions. Yeah. How is the gas business today? It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Could be better, could be worse, but it's pretty good. It costs X amount of dollars to produce a barrel of oil. We may buy it cheaper than that, but not for long. Would requiring a quota of the increase in American oil production go to the domestic market reduce prices? No, it would actually increase prices. If we put quotas on American oil and restrained exports and kept more of that oil here, it would reduce the amount of Canadian oil we imported, right? So our oil is about, I don't know, 12 on any given day, 12 to $15 a barrel more expensive than Canadian oil. So if we replace Canadian oil with more American oil, our gas prices go up. So the quota is not a thing that'll work. The reason we enjoy the gas prices we do is because we import cheap oil from Canada. So it would actually have the opposite effect. Thank you, Agent Pong. I something got lost in the chat. If you asked a question or something, please ask it again. Okay. I thought oil from Canada was more expensive because it's tar sand oil. We don't receive tar sand in the United States. That oil is upgraded to send crude before we get it. We don't receive tar sand oil. Canada has upgraders and they upgrade before they send it to us. And no, it's not more expensive. It's not. It's a little more expensive to refine, but you're talking like pennies. It's not enough to be reflected at the gas pump. The savings on the price per barrel outweigh the additional refining cost by probably 98%. Like, so there's a slight additional cost to refine, but that is more than covered by the differential of the price. Sean Garner, $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Sean. Do heavy, light, sweet, sour refer to the same phenomena? Always get confused on this. So heavy and light refers to the specific gravity of the oil, right? How heavy is it? Some fluids are heavier than others. Some are lighter than others. Some have a different density, right? Specific gravity is when the weight of, say, an oil is compared, it's based off the weight of basically fresh water. Um, so when we're talking about heavy or light, we're literally talking about one of those oils is literally heavier than the other one. It weighs more. If you put 5 gallons in a bucket, it'll weigh more than light oil if you put 5 gallons in a bucket. Sweet and sour, heavy crude has a higher sulfur content. and it smells really bad when it does. Smells like rotten eggs. Smells very sour. Tastes sour. Um, light sweet crude. Tastes a little bit like antifreeze. Actually has a little bit of a sweet flavor to it. So that's what it means. That's literally what it means. It means heavy, light, sweet, and sour, just like it sounds. And people do get confused about that, but it literally means exactly what the words are. Agent Pong, $2 super chat. Thank you so much. Uh, oh, great. TikTok wants me to do a test. They always make me drag a puzzle piece over to another one to verify it's me or something. On a lighter note, what are your favorite foods? My favorite food is probably a ribeye steak, because that's what I eat so much of. Had one last night. And you got to keep in mind, back in the old days, before we had laboratories and equipment to test things like oil or water or other fluids that may come out of an oil well, they would just taste it. They would taste it. That's how they knew what they had. They would taste it. Um, to fix this a little bit. If you have bad pipe in a well, let's say you have casing or tubing, or you have some bad pipe in a well, but you don't know if it's bad, but you suspect it might be. What do? You taste the water that comes out of the well. That's what they did in the old days. I've done that before myself. Yeah, they taste the water. If it has a metallic taste, you got a problem because you literally have steel in your water. Like, yeah, it wasn't always 2025. Welcome, Nadia. Tom, why did our refinery capacity reduce? Because under the Trump administration, we had 4 years of low oil prices, which really hurts refiners. And then we had the crash of 2018. And then we had COVID. And we had a lot of refineries in this country are old and aging and don't have good profit margins, and they started shutting them down. We lost about 12 refineries and 1 million barrels a day, 1.1 million barrels a day of refining capacity. Um, Margins in refining are much tighter than they are in the upstream business. Um, so when it's bad, it's really bad in the refining sector. If it's bad in drilling, it's twice as bad in refining. Do you know what happens with recycled motor oil, like from car oil changes? Actually, I do. So all of the oil that is drained out of all the cars at these quick lubes and dealerships and any place that changes oil, all of that oil is picked up by a company, and they buy it. I think they give like 10 cents a gallon or something for it, or 20 cents a gallon. They come buy it and then they sell it. And a lot of that oil is recycled into synthetic motor oil and other things like that. A lot of it is recycled. A lot of it is uh, turned into asphalt for roads and things like that. But they also recycle it. Absolutely, they clean it up. Oh man, we pay extra for that. Yeah, you pay extra for that. There's a possibility that I mean, it's a very remote possibility, but the oil that's in your car today could have been the oil that was in your car a year ago. It was just recycled. Thank you so much, Grace. Am I a landman? No, I'm not a landman. Uh, why did the USA let Saudi Arabia buy the biggest refinery in the United States? So that refinery was already owned in a partnership in a joint venture with Shell Exploration. And you're talking about the Motiva refinery. And so some years ago, Shell Exploration and Saudi Aramco entered into a joint venture, and they had refineries. They had a retail division, the gas stations, right? They had fuel terminals. They had quite a few things. And they decided to get a divorce, basically. And in that divorce, Saudi Aramco got half, and Shell got half. And the half that Saudi Aramco got happened to include that uh, Motiva refinery in Freeport. That's how that happened. Saudi Arabia owned that refinery for a long time, long time before that occurred. They owned half of it anyway. The drilling contractors working for Qatar Petroleum or Qatar Petroleum, depending on how you pronounce it, sent or used oil to a platform. They put it in the pipeline to the shore. Yeah, they probably just blended it in with, yeah. 2018 is when Saudi Arabia bought it. 2018 is when Shell and Saudi Arabia broke up and they split up their assets. So that went from being a joint venture between Shell and Saudi Arabia to being solely owned by Saudi Arabia. I can't even see it. I don't know what you spelled right and wrong. I can't even. I'm trying to make it out. Like I'm trying to figure out what it says. I don't have them here with me. I don't know where they are. I just watched a video about Chevron. What about secondary retailers, um, like Safeway or Costco? So let me explain this. All the gas comes from the same place. Um, if you're getting gas at a Safeway or Costco, it could come from a Chevron refinery. It could come from another refinery. Um, the difference in the gas is the blend, the additives that they put in it before they take it to the store. You could be buying Chevron gas at a Safeway or a Costco, but it's not really Chevron gas, but because it doesn't have the additives, right? But it could have came from a Chevron refinery. If you're buying gas at a Chevron retail place, it definitely came from a Chevron refinery, and it definitely has the additives. So if you're wanting to not buy Chevron gas, that may be impossible, but you cannot visit their retail locations, which gives them more money, right? I remember back in the day dumping used motor oil in refueling tanks at the trucking outfit I worked for. Do I feel the additives are a best practice? I don't personally buy any of that gas. It doesn't matter to me. What I buy gas down the street from my house, and I just buy gas wherever I need it. Like, I don't care where it comes from, and I'm not worried about the additives. So, um, someone told me renaming the Gulf of Mexico in order to get around the ban. Supposedly, if it's called Gulf of America, it will benefit us with oil somehow. That's not a thing. That's not a thing. First of all, no oil production or drilling was banned in any areas where we produce or drill oil. It was only banned in areas where we don't produce oil. And Donald Trump himself banned it in the same area of the Gulf of Mexico that Joe Biden did. The whole renaming it as an excuse is just it's fucking stupid. Okay, it is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, and of course, it's coming from Americans. Who else would say something so unbelievably stupid? Every piece or tract of land has a legal definition or a legal name that is not the name or definition given to the broad area. Like, you may own a home in the Northgate Addition, but your half acre or whatever, quarter acre, whatever your house sits on, it has its own identifier and its own name, right? It's not Northgate Addition. If you change the name of the addition you live in from Northgate Addition to Southgate Addition, it wouldn't change what you can do on your property. It wouldn't change the name of your property. It wouldn't change anything, right? Same way with the Gulf of America. They need an excuse for doing that because they can't just say they're assholes. So they want to change the name of the Gulf of Mexico. You know what I mean? It's just going to get changed back. It's just going to get changed back. It's been that way since the 1500s. They're just going to change it back. So it's just stupid. It is useless. It does nothing. It doesn't do anything for you or me. It does nothing. Unless you just get a hard on by seeing Gulf of America on a map, it does nothing for you. You know what I mean? I don't get it. I don't understand. It's just dumb. Thank you, Agent Pong. I didn't realize I made everyone feel better. Who does that for me? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's why I talk to myself so much. I heard about the Chevron firings. I buy Sunoco for my car. Am I being duped? No, you're not being duped. Buy what you want. Buy what you want. Sunoco's good gas too. That's true. That's true. Need to have a Sharpie line at the 12-mile mark. Then it's international waters. I don't think he cares if it's international waters. He'll still name it what he wants. Trump's end game is to Remain president indefinitely. Well, it might be, but I don't know if you've looked at Donald Trump lately, but I don't think, let's just say he's pretty long in the tooth. I don't think he has a lot of time left with us on this planet. So, Kristen, thank you so much for your bronze membership. I really appreciate that. Thank you for your support. I'm going to start scheduling these so they're on a schedule so people can know what time to come. I did go to the House Sparks show last night. It was interesting. Um, it certainly looked professional. A lot of graphics and shit, you know. Rio Frio says 12 nautical miles from shore, the Gulf of Mexico becomes international waters. Our economic exclusion zone stops at 200 nautical miles. That is true, Rio Frio. Thank you again so much, Kristen. Jill is the troll slayer. The troll slayer. I like that. How do U.S. oil drilling companies stay competitive if Saudi has companies in the U.S. also? I don't believe. I don't believe. I'd have to look. I don't believe Saudi Aramco um, produces any oil onshore United States, and I would have to look at offshore. I don't believe they produce any onshore in the United States, but they do invest. They do invest in wells. Um, in my experience, trolls taste like water bugs. How do you know what a water bug tastes like? I've eaten a roly poly, but I haven't eaten a water bug. Yeah, roly polies are sweet. Um, how long is the shale play in Texas going to last? Hundreds of years, 50 years? That remains to be seen, but it's going to last for a long time. It's going to last for a long time. I don't. It'll still be around in 50 years, but activity certainly won't be anything like it is now. But it'll still be producing oil in 50 years. But there's not going to be drilling rigs everywhere. If you're talking about active drilling activity, um, I'd say in about 10 years it'll start to decline significantly, and it'll become a very mature field, and there'll still be a lot of oil produced there, and um, technology will bring us new ways to produce that oil that still exists there that won't include drilling new wells. We'll be able to access more areas of the reservoir with the existing wells that are already there. So I wouldn't expect to see very many drilling rigs in West Texas in 10 years. I would expect to see a significant decline in new drilling, but that doesn't mean production will significantly decline as much as, drilling. There's a lot of new technology happening. There's a lot of things coming where we can use existing wells to create oil production. Do you think Alberta Oil and Gas will consider cutting production as retaliation on Trump's tariffs? I don't think so. I don't think so. It's you gotta keep in mind, it's not costing them anything, it's costing us, right? And even if it was, I think they would still maintain production. They have to maintain production. The thing about the oil and gas industry, if you're not growing, you're dying. And you have to constantly be growing because let's say you're let's say you have 500 wells. All 500 of those wells are declining in production every day. That means your revenue is declining every day. That means you have to go find more new production. It is literally one of those businesses where if you're not growing, you're dying. And that's what makes the business so tough because you have to be in a perpetual mode of growth to survive. So I don't see that, happening in Alberta. Um, that's not to say it absolutely won't. Um, I just think those people like making money as much as the rest of us, and will probably um, continue trying to move towards that end. Why does Elon Musk get to have $20 billion from the government? Um, I don't know anything about that. If you could be a little more specific. As of right now, we make 50 cents per MCF at the moment we sell in revenue. 50 cents. I hope you don't work for an upstream operator. That is really bad if you're only getting 50 cents. Um, that's not even good if you're in the midstream space, unless you're just getting an ass load of gas. um, is premium gasoline actually better for a car? It probably is. I'm not a mechanic. But probably, yeah, probably so. Is Devon a good company? Devon's a great company, actually, based here in Oklahoma. Devon's a great company. Thank you so much for the questions. Please give the moderator on TikTok. Do you know anything about pressurizing wells with air or nitrogen? I do. I do. Um, talking about, and I'm assuming you're talking about pressurizing reservoirs to lift oil. It's pretty common practice. Air, nitrogen. Air is not ideal. Air is you don't you don't really want to be pumping air into an oil well or into a reservoir. Um, you don't want to do that, and I'll explain why. You know what exists in air? A lot of oxygen, right? A lot of oxygen, and what needs oxygen? Needs oxygen. Things that are organic. You can literally have organic life existing in your well bore, and really hurt your well. Also, when you mix air with different kinds of fluids and hydrocarbons, it causes a lot of corrosion, um, a ton of corrosion. So you don't want to be injecting air into either a reservoir or a wellbore itself. That's bad news. CO2 is corrosive, but you can actually evacuate it from the well, and it's less corrosive than air under the right conditions. Just pumping natural gas back into a reservoir or a well can help lift oil. Water, you can do a water flood and pump water into a reservoir to push oil out of oil wells. Air is not a great idea. As I understand it, grades are related to altitude above sea level and your engine knocking. That's how I understand it too. Vinyl. Thank you, Lori. Am I looking for an intern? No. No, I am not. We gas lift wells in Australia. We gas lift wells in the United States too. Gas lift is a very effective way to artificially lift a well. Yeah, we do a lot of gas lift in the United States. Hi, Travis. Thank you for joining. Jilly says, I have one. I think she's claiming that spot. You're much more than an intern, Jill. Much more than an intern. Professor Oscar G, thank you so much for the bronze membership. I really appreciate that. Thank you for your support. The cost of a new well per barrel, that depends on the EUR of the well, and that varies, you know, a lot across basins. But depending on where you are, you can drill a new well in West Texas for $7-8 million. You can drill the same well in the Western Anadarko Basin for probably 9. It's probably a little more than 9 in the Bakken. But to know the cost per barrel, you have to know the estimated EUR. Thoughts on Spain possibly reversing course on closing their nuclear reactors? Should the U.S. expand our nuclear energy with government incentives? So, I've never been one to give my opinion on what other countries do with specifically with nuclear, but I would say that I do think I'm about to say the opposite of what I just said. I think it's crazy that companies are shutting down nuclear power, or other countries are doing that. It was crazy when Germany did it. They ended up in a energy crisis. Um, I don't know. I think it's nuts. I think it's nuts. So you know, maybe they need to upgrade. I don't know what they need to do in Spain with their nuclear, but we're and the reason it's nuts is because we're entering into a period in our history where energy security is going to be becoming a thing, because demand for energy globally is just going to explode. It's going to grow at the fastest rate ever. And to just say, I don't need this kind of energy anymore, that's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, it's madness. Crazy town, as Robert Bryce would say. A lot of people don't know there's almost 1 billion people on the planet that don't have access to electricity. And, so while we're sitting here in the States or Canada or wherever you are today, imagine growing up in the world where you don't have access to electricity. But I want you to think about that beyond yourself. I want you to think about that beyond the inconvenience that would provide you. What does it mean if you live in a country where people don't have access to electricity? What does that mean, particularly for women? What does that mean for them? Do you think women have any independence at all anywhere where there's not electricity? You see what I'm getting at? You know, in areas of the world where people don't have electricity, the women are essentially living lives that the women here lived before we had electricity. You understand what I'm saying? They're almost living in a almost a slave type scenario because there's no electricity and there's so much to do. Just because you don't have electricity doesn't mean you didn't have shit to do, right? So it's much more than just access to electricity. It's literally a human rights issue. Electricity is a human rights issue. And um, what about educational opportunities for people that don't have access to electricity? I mean, you know what I mean? It's just really bad. So the world is working hard to expand access to electricity to places that don't currently have it. What's the current break even price per barrel for US producers? That is also dependent on the basin. Last year in the Permian Basin, it was about $60, but that is on the rise because EURs in the Permian Basin are dropping. And EUR is estimated ultimate recovery. That's basically how much oil is a well going to produce over its life. And as that decreases, the break even price increases, right? So unless you find a way to offset that by cutting costs, your break even price continues to rise. There are areas where it's closer to $40, not many left. 40 used to be sort of the national average break even. That's not the case anymore. Permian Basin produces 47, 8% of the oil in the United States out of one basin. That means the average for the nation is going to be really close to 60, but it's higher in the Bakken than it is in the Permian. It's probably 65 in the Bakken. They probably start shutting down at 68. Like the Bakken right now is really close with where oil prices are. It's slow in the Bakken right now. I'm sure there's some activity on. I don't look at it daily, but I can just look at the price and know that it's not popping up there. Thank you so much, Name. What is the most important act that the Trump administration could take for our energy independence? Honestly, the most important thing he could do would be nothing. The most important thing Donald Trump could do regarding our energy independence is nothing. We are significantly more energy independent than we were when he left office. When he left office, we produced roughly 1 quadrillion BTUs of energy more than we consumed. Now it's over 10. So we went from 1 quadrillion BTUs more to over 10 quadrillion BTUs more. That's how much we advanced energy independence in the last 4 years. My advice to Donald Trump would be leave it the fuck alone. Leave it alone. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I haven't seen any Chevron gas stations in my area of North Carolina. I'm not familiar with where Chevron retail. They are huge in California. Like every other gas station in California is a Chevron. North Carolina, I believe there's a lot of Shell stations. I believe there's a lot of Valeros. Not familiar with Chevron in North Carolina as far as retail side. What will happen to Canada when they discover that they actually have twice as much oil as Saudi Arabia? I think they already know that. I think, but how much is recoverable at a profit? That's what matters, How much is recoverable at a profit? And that is yet to be discovered. But is Texaco Chevron? It goes to the same place, right? It goes to the same place. MAGA believes changing the name of the Gulf is going to help us drill more. MAGA believes a lot of shit. What happened, sarcastic sister? Are you getting ads? um, I think you can skip the ads. I'm not a well versed in YouTube yet. I'm still pretty new here, but is there a way you can just skip it? Well, don't worry about me getting paid. Just skip them if you don't want to see them. This isn't about my user experience. It's about yours. Thank you very much. Arco has the largest number of gas stations in California. Chevron is number 2. Yeah, it's probably because Chevron has a lot of refineries in California. Knowledge is power says on YouTube if you make the screen small, the ads don't show up. Hi, Tom. Welcome. What is it? Does that say Karen? Hi, Karen. How are you? Never seen a Chevron in Michigan. There's not a ton of Chevron stations in Oklahoma either. There's some, but there's not a ton. Am I seeing any regrettable Trump voters in your industry since the election? Not really. I mean, that doesn't mean they're not there. Um, in my circles that I kind of run in, we don't really talk politics. We got work to do. We don't talk a lot of politics. And the circle I run in is small. As a business owner, um, as a partner, I kind of stay in my circle. Yeah, Chevron is pretty big in Washington State. Hello, Allison. Thank you for joining the live. The gas tax alone is 86 cents in PA. Yeah. Oh, those Pennsyltuckians. And their gas taxes. I work with a bunch of fellow union carpenters that voted for Trump. They are all standing by their decision so far. I figure they all hit their heads a lot over the years. I would say it takes a lot for someone to admit they regret their vote. Who's my favorite rock band? Man, that's hard to say, but I'm going to have to go with Pink Floyd. Going with Pink Floyd. If I right about here, I can read it. Okay. Oh. My electricity is very cheap here. Has been stable for years. Electricity is cheap where I live too, and the main thing that drives electricity prices is it's the same thing that drives gas prices, and it's demand. It's the demand of electricity wherever you live. If you live in an area that has a massive industrial base that uses a ton of electricity, your electricity is going to cost more. It is no different. Gas prices are no different than electricity prices. Supply and demand, right? So, if you look at areas, and the reason I'm bringing this up, I read a study earlier that made the argument that because what we're seeing in a lot of states where they're building out a lot of renewable energy is we're seeing electricity prices skyrocket. So this woman did this study, and she's trying to prove that it is not renewable energy that's driving electricity prices, and the part she's missing is the demand for electricity in the areas where they're building renewable energy. And it's not so much about renewable energy, it's more about the reliability of the supply in high demand areas. So you know electricity prices are skyrocketing in California while they're building renewable energy, and they have more solar than they need already, right? So they have excess supply of some forms of energy and power. It's not just the type of energy, it's also the demand and the reliability of that energy. If you look at renewable energy in states that don't use a ton of electricity, that don't have large industrial manufacturing bases, electricity will be cheap. Whether it's renewable or whether it's natural gas, the electricity is always going to be cheap. Electricity is cheap where I live. It was cheap before we had renewables. It's cheap after. But when we talk about rising electricity rates, skyrocketing electricity rates, it's trying to implement forms of electric power that don't work well under a lot of strain and a lot of demand, and that's where you see electricity rates skyrocketing. Places like California. Um, It's all about the demand and the reliability. So, renewable energy works great. It just doesn't work great everywhere, right? You have to have the kind of energy you need to match the kind of demand you have, regardless of what kind it is. You have to have the kind you need to match the demand you have in that area. So, can you comment on energy delivery, lack of transmission lines hampering power delivery on? Yeah, that's a huge thing. You can generate all the electricity in the world. If you can't deliver it to the customer, it is useless, right? And it's just like natural gas on the North Slope. They can't deliver it to the customer, so they just pump it back into the ground, right? It's useless. They can't sell it. They make a lot of it and they can't sell it. And that's why they're trying to build that pipeline and that LNG plant. A transmission line, an electrical transmission line, is simply a pipeline for electricity. And the more electricity that you generate, the more pipelines you need, right? And building out high transmission lines, it's the hardest thing to do in this country. It is the single hardest thing to do when we're talking about energy in this country is to build the high transmission power lines. 1,000%. If you look at the subsidies paid to people, to companies, to produce certain kinds of energy and energy transportation systems, the smallest one is transmission lines. And that's not because that the subsidies don't exist. It's because nobody's taking them because it is so hard to build transmission lines. That's why it's so small. The money's there, the money's available. It's just very difficult. So nobody's taking it because nobody's building it, right? Not on the scale we need it to be built. You're in Chicago. Your natural gas bill doesn't seem to be much higher than a year ago. Has natural gas stayed pretty stable? Natural gas prices are actually significantly higher than they were a year ago. But what happens is utility companies buy uh, like natural gas way in advance. So, they likely have a contract in place right now where they're still paying what they were paying for it, I don't know, 6 months ago. But when that expires, depending on sort of the corporate structure of your utility, where you buy your electricity from or where you buy your natural gas from, whether it's a cooperative or just a midstream company or however it's structured, your natural gas bill can fluctuate quite a bit. But one thing you will see is natural gas prices will rise, and people that are on natural gas in their homes, they don't see their prices rise for quite some time, but then they will see their prices rise during a period of low prices because that's when the contracts overlap, right? And we actually saw a lot of people paying more for natural gas at home when after natural gas bottomed out, and that was because companies had entered into contracts months before when natural gas was more expensive. So they want a stable rate. The companies that provide natural gas to your homes, they want a stable rate period of their cost. They want as many of their costs to be as fixed as possible so they're not exposed to the volatility in the market like the producers are. So there will be times where gas may be very high or very low. We're talking about natural gas, but your bill doesn't change. Your bill will change when the next contract cycle comes around. That's how that works. 4:47 Central Standard Time, Jill. 5:47 Eastern Standard Time, February the 13th, 2025. I believe it's a Thursday. All day? Wow. Thank you for that. I was wondering. Um, I was certainly wondering. EPA EV mandate update. Well, that's gone, right? The EPA EV mandate is gone, but nothing much has changed. It was pretty much gone already. It would have been gone whether Donald Trump got elected or not, because the Chevron deference case that the Supreme Court ruled on, you know, pretty much would have got rid of it. It pretty much would have got rid of it. Who lifted the export ban? So the Republicans were 100% pushing for the lifting the export ban. That came from the Republican Party. The first time they tried to do it, the Democrats said no. Barack Obama said no, we're not doing that. And then they made a deal on some concessions for renewable energy. So the Republicans got the export ban, and the Democrats got more renewable energy. And that's how they made that deal. And the export ban was lifted. How long would it take Russia to ramp up oil production? It definitely take them longer than it takes Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia can do it very quickly. Russia much slower, not as slow as the United States, but much slower. So it depends on how much you're talking about ramping up, but you're looking at 6 months to a year for Russia. Gasoline price prediction for summer, national average for this summer. Over the summer months, I must say it will average about 350 a gallon on a national average. Maybe 360. That's being conservative, by the way. That's being conservative. And that's also assuming that someone doesn't crash the global economy or the global oil and gas market. And if that occurs, all bets are off. All predictions are null and void. Yeah. Hundreds of Alabama residents got a $100 surcharge on their energy bills. The surcharge occurred because one of Trump's executive orders froze a grant that assists low income residents. So, the largest oil and gas subsidy that exists in our country is that right there. It is the United States government helping people, low income people, to pay their heating bills. That is the single largest oil and gas subsidy. And it doesn't go to oil and gas companies, it goes to low income people who can't pay their heating bills. But it's counted as an oil and gas subsidy. I will never forget Bernie Sanders. Oh, Bernie. Um, in a debate, in a debate, talking about getting rid of oil and gas subsidies. And I can't remember who he was debating, but the response was, "Are you going to get rid of? You're not going to help people heat their homes anymore? You know that is by far the largest oil and gas subsidy that exists. It dwarfs all other subsidies." But Bernie didn't know that. Bernie didn't know that. He's just anti-subsidy, and he didn't understand that it was poor people getting the subsidies and not the wealthy oil companies that he was trying to take down. I should have told Bernie. I don't have his phone number. He's like me. He doesn't give his phone number to people. Oh, Bernie. I don't have a problem with Bernie. I feel like he should know about these things before he talks about them, just like any other politician. They don't know what they're talking about. Eh, yeah, they don't have a clue. You know, Trump is trying to leverage oil prices down. I think he's trying to use Russia in that effort. Yes, he absolutely is. He's trying to use Russia and OPEC and Ukraine, and we're going to see what happens. Hannah says, just like people don't understand that SNAP and WIC are agriculture subsidies. The vinyl villain says, I'm in a blue state, give me back my money. I don't think they're going to do that, Vinyl. I don't think they're going to give you your money back. Just why do we care so much about Russian oil production? And that depends. There's multiple reasons why, right? Okay. So we need to care about everyone's oil production because how much Russia produces impacts our gas prices. How much Saudi Arabia produces impacts our gas prices. How much Colombia produces, the total volume of oil produced in the world helps determine our gas prices. It's not so much about how much oil we produce, it's how much oil is in the supply chain globally that sets and the global demand that sets the price for that oil. And that's why we care. And people say, well, we don't need Russian oil. We don't need the physical barrels for our use, but we do need the oil on the market. So oil's not $150 a barrel and our gas prices aren't $7, right? We need the oil on the market. And when they are sitting around trying to figure out how they're going to sanction Russian oil, they're literally trying to figure out how to do it and keep as much of that oil on the market at the same time as they can. Isn't that crazy? Like they're trying to figure out how to punish them, yet allow them to keep putting as much oil on the market as they can. Because Americans aren't going to pay higher gas prices. Like they're not down for that. You could come up with any cause, no matter how great it is. If it affects Americans at the gas pump, they're going to be opposed to it. They're going to be opposed to it. What do you think of Trump's executive orders for reciprocal tariffs? It's just it's basically just documenting what's going to happen anyway. You know what I mean? It's just, I think he just got out in front of it and wanted to document and make an announcement that it was going to happen anyway, right? If we put tariffs on someone, they're automatically going to reciprocate to us, right? So he's just saying, well, we'll just do it back to you again. You know what I mean? It's He keeps saying we're going to get rich on these tariffs. We had these tariffs last time he was the president, and we rang up the largest debt ever. Like I don't know what he's talking about. We're not going to get rich. That's not a thing. It's not.
suffer, so does the country. And that's what's going to happen. The people are going to suffer with these tariffs.
Companies get subsidies when they drill new wells. Companies get to write off the money they spend on drilling new wells. They don't get a check in the mail. It's not like the home heating assistance program. Nobody's sending an oil company a check for drilling a well. That's not a thing. It's tax deduction. Just like if I went to one of my other businesses and I spent a bunch of money to expand it somehow, I would get a tax deduction for that. It's no different. It's simply a different. The name of the tax deduction is different because they're actually drilling a well, and nobody else does that, right? So they had to clarify that somehow. Could California secede? I, I'm. It's up to California, you know. I don't like the talk of any state seceding. I honestly, I think it's stupid. You know, if whether you're Texas or California, if you're talking about seceding, you've just lost me. Like you've just completely lost me. It tells me you're not willing to fight for your country, that you'd rather just quit than deal with it. You know what I mean? That's what it tells me. We'd rather just quit. It puts more importance on your state than it does the nation. And so it doesn't matter if it's Texas, California, which side they're on. I don't care. I think it's stupid.
They can't do it anyway. So
Can't is not a word.
I just said it is.
I'm never saying people can't do anything in this country anymore because every time we say someone can't do something, they go do it and nothing happens. So, like,
That's been happening, yes.
Hannah says, I wouldn't mind for at least 4 years.
If California wasn't a part of the U.S., then other states would suffer because they pay for a lot of those states, like Texas.
Any thoughts on Chevron cuts in the Permian? The Chevron cuts. I was really pissed off when I read about that. But it's typical, you know. It's typical. We're going to reward our employees for our record profits by firing all of them. Yeah. Yeah. And those are very high paying jobs. Like those are really good jobs. You would probably figure an average across the board of those 9,000 people they're going to fire. Some make more, some make less, but I would say the average pay is north of $100,000 a year. Um, and so that's a lot of good paying jobs that are going to disappear. Chevron is a great company, though. Good pay, good benefits. I addressed that in a video I posted earlier. I basically spoke directly to people that work for like big oil companies. That's someone I used to work for a big oil company, and everyone's talked about what a great company it was. Holy cow! My dogs are going ape shit. How's my dogs, Jill? That means somebody's here. Um, Chevron is a great company until they decide to fire 20% of their workforce after returning $65 billion of profits to their investors. You know what I mean? Like, I know. Yeah. You know, when Shell did it, they didn't do it after record profits. They didn't do it. Um, you know, Shell did it. When I was a part of Shell, they did it during COVID. That's understandable. The company's losing money. We got to jobs. Totally get it. Even if the company was making a little bit of money, but it just wasn't working, right? But 6 weeks ago, they announced that they had returned more money to their shareholders than they ever had in history in 2024. And 6 weeks later, they're reducing their workforce by 20%. Like, that's not a good company. It's not. It's not a good company. Jill, I come from big oil. I understand I know everything you're going to say before you say it. I know you think they're a great company. There's no such thing as a great company that makes that much money and fires 9,000 people. That's not a thing. That's not a fucking thing. No matter what you say, Jill, I'm never going to agree with you. And I understand your point of view and I understand where you're coming from, but that's not a thing. That's not. I'm sorry. It's not. That's not a good company. And what Chevron is doing right now is one of the reasons I've told people for years what I think about big oil. This is one of the reasons I have the opinion I have of big oil. This is one of the reasons I have the opinion I have of big oil. There is no company that can get that large and be good. It is completely antithetical to logic and reason to think that a company can be as large as Chevron, no matter what industry they're in, and be a good company. That's not a thing. There's no such thing as a company being that big and still being good. How do you think they got that big? Do you think they got that big by taking care of their workforce? Do you think they got that big by not fucking people over? How do you think a company gets that big? Why aren't a bunch of companies the size of Chevron? It's because their duty, first and foremost, is to their shareholders, and that's fine. That's fine. To assume that the 9,000 people they're firing aren't productive, if that is your argument, then I will come back and say that's why they're not a good company. Why would you have 20% of your workforce not being productive? How good of a company can that be if 20% of your workforce isn't productive? That's a terrible company. You don't know how to run a business if 20% of your workforce is not productive. So you can't use that as an excuse. You know what I mean? You just can't. It's a shitty thing. We're talking about people's lives, and this is completely what is wrong with this world right now. Is we have a total disregard for people's lives. There's 9,000 people that have good paying jobs. They're going to have to go home and tell their family, "We're done. The dream's over." And here's the thing, you know, when you get a job with a company like Chevron or you get a job with a company like Exxon or Shell, you think you hit the lottery because you got one of these great jobs. But everybody eventually finds out how great that company is. Everybody. It happens to everybody. I spent 12 years at Shell and I knew one person that actually made it to retirement. Everybody else, they cut. Everybody else, this is well researched. If you're at Shell and you're a couple of years away from retirement, you're fucking gone. you are gone, because the last thing they ever intend to do is pay you your full benefits that you spent 40 fucking years working for. You are gone. You are gone, right? I saw it happen every fucking day in big oil. There's nothing good about those companies. Nothing, Jill, nothing. And we can agree to disagree. I'm just telling you, I've been there. You probably have too, if your opinions are that strong. Um, and if you have somebody that works there and that's why you're saying the things you are, I wish them the best in getting to retirement. 12 years, I saw one person retire with full benefits at Shell. 12 years, one person. And I knew a lot of people that were 1, 2, 3 years away from retirement. They just disappear. Where'd they go? They shit canned them, so they didn't have to pay them their benefits. That's not a good company. It's not. When you're more worried about the dollars and cents than the people that work for you, you're not a good company. I don't know what having that point of view makes me. I don't know, you know, but that's what I believe. That's what I believe. My moderator's over here telling people that I'm not talking to her. You have to worry about the dollars and the cents. You have to worry about the dollars and the cents. So let me paint this picture another way, Jill. When you're on a pension, right? Let's say you work for Shell and you have a pension. Let's say you need to make it 30 years to get your full pension. In the last 3 years of that pension plan, that's when it doubles. That's when you have all the growth in your benefits and pension and everything is like in the last 3 years of it. You make more money, you put more money towards your pension in the last 3 years if you have a pension than you will in the first 20 something years. Easy. Easy. It's the law of compounding interest. That's how it works, right? It just they're cutting that out from under your feet. You worked for 27 years to get to this particular spot, and they told you to fuck off. Terrible. Terrible. For dollars and cents when these people they count their money by the billions, and you're talking to me about dollars and cents. I get it that it happens. I understand that it happens. It's a thing that happens. But let me tell you something. At Shell, it happens to everyone, right? It happens to 95% of the people. You can literally read stories they've done about Shell and studies they've done. They are so bad at doing this to people. There's a long history of this. There is a very long history of this. This isn't an occasional thing. This isn't the market's down, we're struggling. This is a coordinated effort, a long-term plan What that means is basically it is the policy. It is their policy that you're not aware of, that if you do make it to that 27-year mark, that they're going to break it off in your ass, and you don't know about it on day one, but they do. You don't know about it on day one, but they do. That's it. That's it. That's all there is to it. Great topic to debate, Jill. I appreciate you coming in here, even though I don't agree with you. It's a good conversation to have. 5:15. That means I got to go. I got stuff I have to do. I'm going to schedule a live for tomorrow. What's a good time, Jill?
Before my husband gets home, I know that.
Just you just tell me the time.
Well,
Your time. 3?
yeah, that'll work.
Is that okay?
Yeah, 3 will work my time. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to schedule a live for tomorrow, 3 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Central Standard Time. And we'll do this until we figure out something else. We'll start scheduling these. And for all the gifters, TikTok or YouTube, thank you so much for the super chats, the memberships. I really appreciate it. I'm going to start doing this daily. I have to go get my kid from school. That's what I do. Thank you, everyone, so much. Thank you for participating. Jill, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for the gifts.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. We'll be seeing you tomorrow.